I also want to ask, people ask a lot about the high school survival guide that never was. Kind of what was the idea and what happened?
Well, unfortunately, and Michelle knows this because she worked on the executive side, but you were talking about like the series at that point only really went like 3 years.
Yeah, they basically would make enough episodes so they could strip the series, and that means basically they can air it 5 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like that. So that was it. And then think about it. You guys did that show for 3 years. Your audience grows up and starts watching other things, and now a whole new audience. Oh, I just hit the thing.
I did that.
Oh my
couple times an
God.
episode.
So then the new audience comes in, and then you have a whole fresh audience that's watching the show. So they didn't need to make more episodes than that.
It was kind of
But that's true. But in hindsight, I think because at the end of our 3rd season, we were like the most popular we were. Yeah. So at the end of that, there was like, hey, maybe we did pull the plug
a little early.
But knowing that it was 3 seasons, we really did make it that you're going to go to high school. So then they did commission a script for Ned's high school. But at the same time, that's when they were really pushing. That's when Disney was really exploding with all the music.
Yeah.
So that's when they came to me and said, "You have a music show."
Right. Victorious then came music based,
and Miley, and then Jonas. So they're like, "Do you have a?" So at the same time, I pitched them like a show about the world's worst boy band. Yeah, and that's what it was. And then you guys know we went back with maybe even adulting.
Yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to bring up. Was we for a couple years developed at least the concept of
great concept,
the adult survival guide, because the fans who watch the show, they've grown up just like us, and now they're in the fucking real world. Like, people always ask me, like, what would the reboot be? Are you teachers back in school? Are you in college? It's like, no,
I like
dude.
the teacher angle.
Yeah,
I mean, that's funny, but but Ned wouldn't have become a teacher.
A gym teacher?
Maybe.
I think that Ned would have tried to go into like a career in like video games.
Yeah,
but then
failed.
end up teaching.
Yeah, later.
Right.
Yeah.
Ned's a janitor?
I don't...
But I loved our concept, which is like, that's the hardest time for this generation, is figuring out once you're dropped into the real world and you kind of realize like nothing has prepared me for how complicated being responsible for my adult life is.
Yeah.
Paying my own bills, roommates, cars, insurance, life just all of a sudden comes at you fast. And that was our concept for the reboot, was Ned, Mose, and Cookie out of college, needing to figure out
and
their adult lives.
rebooting their lives. Like I think in that reboot, just very quickly, you were actually very tech successful, but miserable because like you were making the money, but you're in the corporation you didn't really believe in, or had some higher ups that you thought were tools.
Yeah,
you were engaged,
but had come from anger management.
And you just got out of anger management.
Yeah, and coming out of a major relationship, which is like a huge adulthood transition when you're kind of rebuilding your life.
And then you end up, I forget, you quit something. You end up on his couch, and by the end of the theory was that you and Cookie are living together. You leave the guy because you realize you're not, and then you guys kind of all restart.
Yeah, the thought for the pilot was like Ned actually at the beginning of the pilot being actually like despondent, like struggling with his adult life, unable to give tips.
And then
Cookie calls
Mosley.
Like, we haven't been in touch. He calls.
Right.
You gotta
Recalling
help
and
him.
reinforcement.
Like, you gotta help him.
And the backstory, I think, was that you guys had dated
We
at some
had
point in
dated.
high
Well,
school.
for sure, we dated.
Right, so you call her, he's like, I can't help him.
It was
and
my
you
old
come in,
love.
And you're like,
you're like, hey, snap out of this.
Yeah.
This isn't you. And you get Ned back on board with like, all right, we're gonna do this adulthood thing, and I'm gonna create a new guide.
A new guide.
Yeah.
Beautiful idea.
Beautiful idea. I agree.
Things come around.
Yeah, I know it's still out there. I just wanted it to be shared because I loved it, and I loved our pitch, and I loved pitching with you guys.
Yeah.
And like, I just think the concept was like a win-win for everybody, the audience, us.
Yeah, it's not dead. It's there. It's there. And when
You put in so much good effort for that.
Man, it was fun.
Video.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of audience members ask, what do you think Ned, Mose, and Cookie would be doing? And I just wanted to share that because I think that's what they would be doing. They'd be struggling through their 20s like the rest of us.
But figuring it out.
Figuring it out.
Yeah,
exactly like you did in
We're
middle
all
school.
figuring it
and
out.
diving in and doing the research and finding out like things like, I think we had episodes to like the guide to taxes, the guide to tickets, right? The guide to toxic roommates, all
Yes,
that kind
that.
of stuff.
The guides to a toxic boss. Yeah,
all those
struggling
things.
with roommates.
Yeah. Finances,
So I
taxes.
love that. Maybe it'll come back around someday.
Yeah, you
It's
never
out
know.
there in a parallel
There you
universe
go.
in the multiverse. Every time we finish an episode,
You do a
like-
shot.
That's after, baby.
No, wisdom, baby.
No, she's sober.
This ain't middle school anymore.
No, when we finish episodes, we like to give one tip to the audience, and coming from the tip masters, that's also the thing.
masters.
We also get credit for like the tips on the show. I'm like,
Yeah,
it
this
was
is
the
all-
writers' room of adults giving you tips.
Well, but again, looking back at all the tips that we needed at that,
right?
Yeah.
From a kid, it's right.
yes, but so if you have both of you, if you could give a tip to an audience member out there who is maybe just struggling with their adulthood, just struggling with whatever this life is, being responsible for it, setting it up, finding joy.
Well, I guess from like a path perspective, you and I are always of the idea of just try not saying no. Just try saying yes to things. Like if something isn't perfect, that's okay. You can pivot. But I think so many times you think, oh, I'm not going to take this job or I'm not going to make this move because it's scary. And I think it just leads to other things. Like it just does, just naturally. It's the same thing we tell our kids all the time.
Yeah.
You should take this job or meet that person because that person may know someone who has something that you're interested in, and then that will lead to this, and that will lead to this. And so that was kind of our paths a lot in life. And I
trying to
think-
manage your fear because it's
Yeah.
because you're sometimes we focus on making the wrong moves that we miss out on what could eventually lead to the right move. So like we were saying earlier, some things didn't work out, but then all of a sudden it worked out the next time. So those are things sometimes like, I've been fired like 5 times from shows or from pilots or from writing something, but then that led to something else for someone that didn't like the script, but somebody else did like it and said, so if I don't take that thing or I don't take a risk. So risk is something I think is very important. It's very scary, especially when you're like, I don't want to look like an idiot, but I would say that get out of your comfort zone, do hard things. It's very easy to stay back and play it safe, but when you really do live a life, it's when you take those risks. I'm sure you guys can think about it too. And the idea is like it can be scary, but like you get one shot, Yeah. And the other thing, like, early on in my life, I came across the term like snafu, which is a World War II, like situation normal, all fucked up. That's where we're all in that.
Yeah.
Like if you think that a person that has got their life together, like they don't.
Yeah.
None of us have cracked the code. I mean, I'm 57 now. I figured at your age, I'm like, oh, by 57, I'll have it all figured out. I don't know what I'm doing. I still don't know
Give me
what I'm
tips.
doing. I still get a script and I'm like, I don't know how to write this. So it never changes. You get new challenges come. But I would just say, just accept those challenges. And what Michelle has said is move forward. Nothing's going to happen with just you sitting there. You have to move forward. And if you move 3 steps forward and you get burned, get back, then you go somewhere else. But I would say that I think people sometimes are just a bit too afraid to take those risks.
Yeah.
But I can say personally for me, if I don't.
Every time I took a little risk, it paid off. Like even working at Nickelodeon, it wasn't even really a risk. It was just a random thing where I'm an adult and I met an executive on the show that you were working on, and he had his young kids with him, his teenage kids, and he was kind of stressing out because he didn't know what to do with them. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'll watch him for a day. So I took him out. We went to Universal. I think we were down in Florida, and cut to I was his assistant like 6 months later because when he was looking for an assistant, he's like, oh, she was really great. So that was my first job at Nickelodeon. And I'm like, if I had just sat there and I was afraid and I didn't, and it wasn't a means to an end. It was really just me like, I'm not doing anything. Sure, I'll watch the kids. And they happened to like me. So
But like,
So that
I
was
think
good.
That's easy to
so
understand.
you just take things that aren't like the natural choice, maybe.
That aren't the perfect next step.
Yeah,
but,
it's like
but
just
be in the
do
movement.
it. And don't
Yeah.
be afraid of trying
Move
things
through
that
it.
don't. I'm like, of course I didn't want to be a babysitter, but I was like,
Yeah.
sure, I'll just
Yeah.
do that because
love
it's
it.
something
Stay
that's
open.
there.
It's
That's
scary.
such a great tip.
it's scary. It's scary to take that leap of faith a little bit. But then when you do that, first of all, 2 things. You feel great. You're like, I did this. Even if it bombs, you're like, I had the guts to go for it or to jump that, or ask for that job, or to ask that person out, or to just go to this place that something might work out. But as you go forward, or as you say yes to things, it opens up all those doors. Everything right now is like in the shows like these, everything's like these multiverses, right?
Yeah.
And those are simply just doors that you decide whether you're going to open them or not.
Yeah.
So those doors are scary.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like it's much better to open that door and see what's behind it than to stay back. So I would just say for kids, if in your 30s, if it feels stagnant or you're not sure, just push yourself.
What's up, guys? Thank you for watching this episode of Ned's Declassified Podcast Survival Guide. If you can't get enough of us, we got clips over on the PodCo YouTube channel. You can check them out there. And if you really can't get enough of us, we got a ton of extra content and live streams and live Q&As on Patreon. And that helps support this podcast and help us keep going and make it possible. So we love you for that. Check out the links in the description, and thanks for tuning in.